What is going on, everybody? Hey, it's Mike. I know y'all haven't heard my voice in a while, and for that, I don't really have anything to say because it's just been life, man. My wife was deployed, had every intention to record some podcasts while she was gone, and I just did not have it in me to do it. To be completely frank, I was going through some bouts of depression, which I had never really dealt with before, and I was running two separate podcasts. And what I found out, and I've told a few other people this, was that running the two podcasts, both of them having separate points, completely separate messages that I was trying to get across, it made it to where I didn't have the brain power to figure out what to record for either one of them. So I kept wanting to record stuff for Resetting Dad, and then I kept wanting to record stuff for Professional Dependa, which is this one. And I ended up just not recording anything. And I decided just to not even worry about it for a little while, kind of start working on my headspace a little bit. Um, got over my little depressive bout there. Doesn't mean it won't come back, but now I'm a little bit more aware of it. I know a little bit more how to handle it, if you will. Also trying something new. I know y'all can't see it right now, but I'm actually going to try to start recording a little bit, like visually, um, and that way I can like have something tangible to put on social media to talk about this, to try to grow this audience a little bit. Because I do think this podcast is good. Me personally, obviously, I think it's good. It's my podcast. So, with all of that said, thank you for tuning back in. If you have listened to this podcast before, I greatly appreciate you sticking with me. I know it's been a minute. This podcast is going to be a little bit different moving forward. Some people might call it a rebrand. I'm not rebranding it because it's still going to be the Professional Dependa because that's me. It's who I am. That's my thing. Um, but what I'm going to do is the focus is not going to be 100% on male military issues, male military spouse issues. The focus going forward is primarily going to be military family issues, but I'm also going to discuss just general family stuff at also because at the end of the day, I'm not just a male military spouse. I am also a dad. I'm also a husband. I'm also a friend to a lot of people. So, or I think I'm a friend to a lot of people. I don't know if they think I'm their friend or not. We'll find that out. Um, but I'm a lot of things. I'm not just a male military spouse. Yes, that is the whole point to the original idea behind Professional Dependa was male military spouse, and that's still where my heart is. But there's a lot of other things after being, a dependent now for 12 years. Um, there's a lot of other things that I think we could focus on to help better the military community as a whole, and not just me. I can definitely help out. I think I can help out shining the light on issues that surround the male military spouse community. But then at the same time, there's other things that we deal with as parents and as just people in general, especially being military spouses, that I honestly kind of feel like I was doing a disservice by not talking about it. So that's what we're going to do. So this is not necessarily a rebrand. This is what I'm going to call a reintroduction because I've already done a reintroduction once whenever I'd taken a hiatus. So why do a reintroduction? What's the whole purpose behind doing a non-rebrand? Um, Pretty easy because my parenting style is a direct result of being a male military spouse. The way I handle my kids is seriously like a direct result of my life as a military spouse. It is a result of the people that I've come in contact with, the issues that have come up from being a military family. Um, Part of the reason why I had such a hard time with my wife's last deployment that she just got back from was because my kids were having such a hard time, and I was struggling with how to help them through that. Um, just so you're aware, my kids have been going to the MFLAC, the Military Family Life Counselor, since we first got to Georgia. And that's because honestly, the MFLAC program is a fantastic program. It is, they are military affiliated, but they don't report to the base, if that makes sense. Basically, it gives your kids a person to talk to, that is a counselor that can help them work through emotions that come from being a military kid. I mean, this is the fifth state. Yeah, I'm counting in my head. Yeah, this is the fifth state that my kids have lived in, and my oldest is 10. And there's a incredibly high likelihood that by the time this podcast gets published, because I don't think I'm gonna put it out until Thursday. So yeah, today's Valentine's Day. I'm recording it while my people are at school and work. Um, anyway, so there's a really high probability that by the time this podcast hits on Thursday, that we'll have orders. That's just and that's kind of one of those things. We've been here for 3 years, and we will probably get orders very soon. So that'll be 6 states before my kid's 11th birthday. How many of y'all, like, and this is like, when I say 6 states, I'm talking, we have lived as far east, pretty much, and as far west as you can in the United States. And we've lived in Maryland and Alaska and now back to Georgia. So you can't, I mean, we literally have crisscrossed the continent twice. I guess crisscross was there and back. So yeah, so we've crisscrossed the continent. And my kids will have lived in 6 states in, like I said, before my oldest 11th birthday. So that's a lot for kids. That is, but this will be the third school that they've gone to. This will be the third time being the new kid. That's a lot for kids. I mean, think about how hard it is for adults to make friends. That's one of the reasons why I think that military kids are some of the most resilient people on earth, is because, and maybe it's just looking at my own kids. Granted, I just got done saying they had a really tough time. That's kids. They missed their mom. Mom missed birthdays. She missed Christmas. She missed holidays. That's tough for kids. She missed the first day of school again because she was just deployed last year. That is really, really hard for kids. I don't care who you are. That was tough for me, but that's really, really tough for kids to deal with. Whenever they have a parent that's normally incredibly supportive and she's just not there. Not through any fault of her own. Not like my wife volunteered to deploy. She had just deployed the year before. It wasn't her idea. But kids are so resilient because of, and again, I'm talking about my kids specifically here, because of the way we allow them to navigate their emotions. And that's one of the topics going forward is mental health for kids. That's why and I know I kind of got sidetracked here for a little bit, but y'all, if you've listened to me before, this is what I do. Mental health for your kids, especially, is so important to address early and let them know that talking to someone that's a trusted adult that is not you. Like my kids know that if they need to go see the MFLAC, they don't even have to tell me. And I talked to the MFLAC, and I kind of knew this already because it made sense, but then the MFLAC confirmed it. Like, unless my kids give her permission, she can't tell me what they talk about. And that makes sense. I mean, why would you want your kids to go see a counselor just for the counselor to turn around and tell you everything they talked about? You think your kids are going to be as open and honest with that counselor if they know that they're just going to repeat everything right back to you? I know if I had gone to counseling whenever I was a kid, especially my oldest daughter's age, and they said, "Look, everything you tell me, I have to tell your parents," I wouldn't have told her anything, or him, or whoever the counselor was. I wouldn't have said nothing. There's no way I would have told anybody at that age if I had anything going on with me, if I knew for a fact they were going to turn around and tell my parents. Or my mom, rather. And think about it. Like right now, if you went to a counselor right now and they were like, "Hey, everything you tell me, I'm going to tell your partner." What if you're trying to work through issues with your partner? What if there's things going on and you want a third party to to help work through whatever kind of feelings that you're having, that you want to, are either trying to figure out if you want to get away from your partner or if you want to fix things with your partner. What if that person was like, hey, everything you say is going right back to the person that you're talking about? I wouldn't say anything. Would you? But that's one of the great things. That's one of the things that I really like about my kids knowing is that there is a trusted adult that they can talk to. And if they want to come tell me about it, they absolutely can. My youngest comes back and tells me everything. She comes back and she's like, hey, I got to go see the counselor today. We did this, and this. My oldest is like, if she even tells me she went to see the counselor, she very rarely fills me in on what she said. But I can tell you this, every time she has said that she's gone to see the counselor, she has been in a significantly better mood that day, like that, from that point forward, than she was the day before. Every time. So, highly recommend the MFLAC program. And of course, this is always going to be person dependent. Like if the MFLAC there isn't really, some people are in jobs and they probably shouldn't be in a job. If the MFLAC there isn't good, then I'm sorry. We happen to have a phenomenal one here where we're at. She's great. And so that's going to be one of the topics moving forward. We're going to talk about mental health because it's important. It's for the first time ever in my life, and I'm 40, and I struggled with it while my wife was deployed. So if I can admit that I struggle with it, and I'm a pretty well, see, and this is one of those things, like it feels weird talking about mental health because it feels like anything you say that's different than like super PC is going to be weird. So I'm going to say it, understanding that I don't mean anything by it, anything negative by it. But if I struggle with mental health as what I would be considered a well-rounded, neurotypical person, then, and I can admit it, then there's no reason why anybody else should be able to admit, hey, I need a little help sometimes. What worked for me? Journaling. Saying out loud that I needed help. Talk to my doctor about it. Talk to my nutrition coach about it. Talk to my wife about it. And it helped. And then my wife came home, and then it got all better. Like seriously, like all of my depression feelings went out the window whenever she came home. So, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that because my kids felt better. So that's what we got. Some of the other things we're going to talk about, that was long-winded to talk about one of the topics moving forward. So what else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about PCS stuff. Why? Because that is one of the things that people always complain about, vent about, have trouble with. So we're going to talk about PCS stuff. Like I said, we're probably going to be PCSing, so y'all will get to go along the ride with me. I'm going to start posting videos on YouTube, like little short videos on YouTube on the Professional Dependa channel. I think that's another reason why I didn't want to actually rebrand, because I've already got Professional Dependa on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I've already got that name locked down across pretty much every social media platform. I might even make a Twitter. I have a Twitter from back when I was in college, and I don't think I've ever messed with it. So maybe I'll do a Professional Dependa Twitter and start putting stuff on there. I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna talk about PCS stuff, how to PCS, some of the things to be careful of while you PCS. We've done this a few times now. I think I've got it handled pretty much, but there's always stuff that I can learn. I learn something new every time. And the way we PCS is different than the way other people PCS, because whenever we do it, we have a camper, so we do basically a partial ditty move. We get the stuff that we know for a fact we're going to need when we get to the next base, and we load it up in the truck and the camper, and that's what we live in until our household goods show up. Granted, if we were going overseas, we would not be able to do that. Or if we were coming back from overseas, we wouldn't be able to do that. So we haven't been fortunate enough to get orders overseas yet. Who knows if we even will at this point. Getting orders right now, probably getting orders this week, and next duty station's 4 years. That puts my wife at 16. So we'll see what happens. All right, so what else? Let me look back at my notes here. I actually made notes, so that doesn't tell you that I'm actually trying to be more dedicated to this. I made show notes. That's a big plus for me. All right, so we're going to talk about PCS stuff. Just said that. We're going to talk about mental health for kids and adults. We've already talked about that. Another couple things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about working as a military spouse, or, in my personal experience, the inability to find work as a military spouse. Finding work as a military spouse is not easy. I have a whole thing, a whole nother episode, a couple episodes back, where I was saying why I understand so many military spouses get into MLM businesses. I totally get it. I think there are better options out there. I think there's better ways to do it, but I get it. It's the same reason why I understand why so many people have OnlyFans now. Not me. Nobody wants to see this on OnlyFans. But I get it. You know, if you're able to, that's my dog. If you can hear him, he's bored with my recording. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's not for me, but dude, I get it. Um, so yeah, we're going to talk about work and the inability to find work. We're going to talk about food. Why are we going to talk about food? Because there's a lot of people that in the military, especially, that struggle with food insecurity. You know, my friend Heather, she was a former guest on this podcast, is leading the charge on food insecurity in the military to try to bring awareness, to try to help people figure out ways to fix it. So if y'all aren't following Heather Campbell on LinkedIn or on Instagram, I'll put her business Instagram on the show notes because I cannot remember the name of it right now, but I'll tag her in the show notes. Because if you're struggling with food insecurity, she's got a lot of good resources, and you need to follow her because she's amazing. And then I just thought of something else I was going to talk about, but I didn't write it down. This is why I make show notes, so I can write stuff down. Just like I'm writing down right now to tag Heather in the show notes. So we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about a few other things. You know, I'm going to try to get some guests on the show. What I'm going to open myself up to doing is doing more Zoom podcast. I personally have always enjoyed doing face-to-face podcast. I find the conversation goes a little bit better, but if I'm not able to do face-to-face, then I need to open myself up to doing Zoom, because that will give us at least the ability to talk to somebody, whereas I wouldn't normally have that capability. And nobody's flying to see me, so I can build like a podcast studio. Nobody's doing that. So, Zoom podcast, it is. Yeah, man, look, I really want to thank y'all. I'm not going to record Resetting Dad anymore, but the topics that I was discussing on Resetting Dad are going to just come over to here. So if you want to go check out like the 3 or 4 episodes I did for Resetting Dad, do it. I think they're good, especially if you are a dad or just a parent that wants to hear another dad's perspective. Understand also, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm just a dude that's, been a military spouse for 12 years, been a husband for almost 20, and I have opinions. They're educated opinions, but they're opinions. Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about was education. So, and why it's important for military spouse, but maybe not in the areas that you're thinking. Like, you don't need a degree for everything. I wish somebody would have convinced me of that sooner, before I got 3 of them. Very proud of the fact that I have these 3 degrees, but not do anything with them. Such is life, right? I did want to keep this short because it is just coming back into it, and thank you for listening for this long. We are going to record every week. That is the promise that I am making to y'all. We are going to have a new episode every week, and I'm going to stick to that, even if it means that I have to record, 3 or 4 times a week myself, and then schedule them to be released later. I'm going to do that because I need to get better about doing this. I've got a lot of thoughts in my head. There's a lot of stuff going on in my brain, and I feel better about getting it out and talking to people. So I'm not sure what next week's podcast is going to be, but there is going to be a podcast next week. And I really hope y'all enjoy this. I really hope y'all look forward to it, listening as much as I look forward to making them. And yeah, thanks. Thank you for listening to the Professional Dependa. Maybe one of these days I'll actually have like that cool intro music. Maybe. I don't know. I've got to figure out a way to do that. I think I did that. I think I figured that out for one episode, and I have not been able to figure it out ever again. So I want to spend some time to figure out how to actually get intro and outro music. Everything else is going to stay the same. So yeah, come check me out on YouTube, Professional Dependa. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all the things. I don't have a Professional Dependa Facebook. It's just my personal Facebook. So yeah, find me on Instagram or TikTok. TikTok is a lot of bourbon videos. I got really into bourbon about 2 years ago, and I partially blame TikTok for that because I found this whole bourbon TikTok community, and I learned so much about bourbon and whiskey. And so yeah, a lot of my stuff on TikTok is that, but I'm going to start bringing more of other content on there. Start posting some of the videos that I shoot for the podcast on there, but mainly it's going to be on Instagram. But yeah, come find me. And thank you. We will see you next week. Cheers.